Hello, my name is Karen Gutfreund, and I am the curator for Agency Feminist Art and Power that's at the Museum of Sonoma County through June 5th. And today I have with me Ria Brodell, one of the 28 artists in the show, and a very important one that we are celebrating their work. So let me introduce Ria. Ria Brodell is a non-binary trans artist, educator, and author based in Boston. Their work explores gender, sexuality, and identity within the context of history, contemporary society, and religion. Brodell attended the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, received a BFA from the Cornish College of Arts in Seattle, and an MFA from the School of Museum of Fine Arts, Tufts University. Brodell has exhibited internationally and throughout the United States with solo and group exhibitions. Ria is a recipient of the Artadia Award, a Massachusetts Cultural Council Arts Fellowship, and an SMFA Traveling Fellowship. Their work has appeared in New York Magazine, The Guardian, Art News, the Boston Globe, and New American Paintings, among other publications. Brodell's first book, Butch Heroes, was released in 2018. And a second volume, volume 2, is forthcoming via MIT Press, and it will be available in about 2 years. Well, welcome, Ria. I'm so excited to have you with us today.
Hi, Karen. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, so tell us about this project and about Butch Heroes.
Sure. Yeah. Butch Heroes began in, probably 2010, I think, like 12 years ago now. So I've been working on it for a while. And I started it, I was just curious. I was curious, like, what queer folks did throughout history, like how we survived, how we found each other. So I was just sort of looking for people that I could identify with. And I started to do some research, and then started to find people and paint their portraits. And in addition to that, I am sort of looking to the role models that were given to me as a kid. Like, I grew up Catholic, and so I've styled the Butch Heroes paintings in the format similar to Catholic holy cards, because that's the way that role models were presented to me, as people to look to for guidance. And I couldn't really identify with those folks very much. So I decided to use these folks that I really can identify with, and sort of replace those initial figures with people who I really love and have grown to know over the course of the research that I've done.
I know the stories are just so fascinating. Tell us a little bit about how you find these individuals and the amount of research that goes into the creation of each piece.
Sure. I mean, it usually just starts by me. Well, initially it started by me going to the library, like the Boston Public Library. Thankfully, Boston has a ton of universities, so different university libraries, Boston College, Tufts, and just looking for books and skimming through those books, looking for stories, for names, and then finding a name and following that path, trying to figure out if the story is a real story, if the person was a real person. Verifying facts. Sometimes it's not books, sometimes it's like journal archives, newspaper archives, physical archives, just really looking for people and their stories. And after that, it's fact finding. So what did this person do for a living? Where did they live? What did they wear? All kinds of stuff. So the research goes all over the place, from determining how to, I'm thinking of John Oliver, Helen Oliver in Scotland. Like, they were a laborer, and mostly they were a plasterer. And so then I was like, okay, what is a plasterer, and like the time period. And then I end up like doing a bunch of research on how to plaster a Scottish house. So, or most recently I was like researching indigenous fishing techniques in British Columbia, because the person I was painting was a fisherman. And so it leads me in all sorts of different places. it's really kind of fun that way.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. So I'm curious, where in the process of doing the research do you start doing the painting? Do you wait till you have most of the research done where it's like it's a really solid story, or do you like painting right away?
Yeah, it depends. So the first part of it is determining if the person is real and what they did and what they wore. That I get done before I start the painting, because I want to know, what am I depicting and like, how am I depicting them? So if I'm depicting them doing their job, then say I'm looking up like, medieval looms or, plastering, like I said, or fishing. And what's that look like? And what are the tools? And so then I'm gathering all of that information. And then I'm situating the painting. And so in that situation, then I'm doing sketches. I'm like, do I want them sitting? Do I want them standing? Do I want them working? What does that pose look like? And I'm determining like the colors of the clothing, the textures, the landscape sometimes, or interiors, and putting that all together in a lot of different sketches and color studies. And then once I try to determine as closely as possible if I'm doing this accurately, which in that case, I'm relying a lot on archives, librarians, things like that, antique catalogs. Then I can start the painting. Then I'm like, okay, I know this is the best I can do. This is the composition I want. And then I just start putting those pieces together.
Yeah, they're just such exquisite paintings. How many have you done to date, and how many do you have planned that I know that you have you have to get them to MIT Press in.
Yeah. I should have looked that up. I feel like I'm on number 30 something, 35 maybe.
Wow.
I know in the next volume, there's going to be 15 paintings. And in the first volume, I think there were 28 maybe. I don't have the numbers exactly, but yeah.
It's sort of like I've literally forgotten how many shows have I done. It's somewhere between 40 and 50, but
I know. I can't believe I've lost track at this point, which is cool. Like it's great that I've found so many people, and so many more people too that I'm not going to be able to paint, so it's
yeah.
crazy.
Oh, it's so amazing. And I've, of course, spent so much time in the museum, and I can't tell you how much time people spend with your work. It's amazing, and how they walk away just shocked many times of not knowing these histories, of not knowing these stories, and how these individuals have been treated throughout history. And I can only hope, that things get better and more, equality as we move forward. Although right now it seems all the clocks are being turned back, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But so I know you're going to read a couple of the stories, and so which one would you like to start with, and just jump right in?
Yeah, well, I thought I would start with Jeanne Bonnet because they lived in San Francisco, and you all are close to San Francisco. So this is Jeanne Bonnet right here. So a little bit of backstory, I guess, behind this painting is, for this one, I had to do a lot of research into the landscape of San Francisco, but because of the earthquake, which now I'm blanking on the year that happened, a lot of San Francisco was destroyed. So there wasn't much to go on for this time period, but I could find this landmark here, Lotta's Fountain, is in downtown San Francisco, and it's still standing. It's one of the only things still standing from prior to the earthquake. I actually came across it when I was visiting San Francisco a couple of years ago. Surprisingly, I was just like, holy crap, it's Lotta's Fountain. But anyway, so this is the district right around Lotta's Fountain where Jeanne Bonnet hung out. And so I was looking at a lot of old photos and maps of San Francisco to make this painting, and the California Newspaper Archive. Jeanne Bonnet. Jeanne Bonnet was born in Paris, but moved to San Francisco with their family as part of a French theatrical troupe. By the time Bonnet was 15, he was in trouble for fighting and petty thievery, and was placed in the Industrial School, San Francisco's first reform school. As an adult, Bonnet was arrested dozens of times for wearing male clothing, an illegal act that got him frequently mentioned in the press. Bonnet, quote, cursed the day she was born a female instead of a male, according to newspaper accounts. He was quoted as declaring, "The police might arrest me as often as they wish. I will never discard male clothing as long as I live." Bonnet spent much of his time on Kearny Street and made a fairly good living catching frogs and selling them to French restaurants in downtown San Francisco. In 1875, he began visiting brothels, convincing the women to leave prostitution and form an all-female group. Together, they supported themselves by shoplifting. One of these members was Blanche Bonnet, who had just arrived from Paris. Bonnet and Blanche moved to McNamara's Hotel in San Miguel, just outside of San Francisco, to keep Blanche safe from a threatening ex-lover. On the evening of September 14th, 1876, Bonnet was lying in bed waiting for Blanche when a shotgun blast came through the window, killing him instantly. It was eventually determined that the shot was meant for Blanche and was the act of either a jealous lover or a pimp wanting to kill Blanche as an example to the other girls. Unfortunately, neither theory was ever proven, but the women of San Francisco's red light district came out en masse for Bonnet's funeral. I'll show that again. And so when I was making this painting, I had done a lot of sketches of the scene. And initially I had put them in their hotel room. And then it was all planned out. I was ready to start painting and I looked at it and I was like, this doesn't tell Jean Bonnet's story really. It's like the moment before his death, but it doesn't really say anything. And so I scrapped it and I decided to redesign the painting to show the district and the women that supported Jean Bonnet, and that, redid it. So.
No, that's such a powerful story. Oh, and by the way, the earthquake, of course, we had the 1906, and then of course there was the 1989 where the whole mission,
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious, where is that fountain? Is it like in like Union Square area or more? Do you remember?
I don't know San Francisco very well, but I remember I was smack in the middle of downtown. I was on my way to Yerba Buena Center. It's right near there.
Okay. Now, yeah. So I'll go look for it next time I'm down there.
Yeah. And then, okay, the next one I'm going to read is Okuhara Seiko and Watanabe Seiran. Okuhara Seiko was a literati artist of the late Edo period and early Meiji period. A painter, calligrapher, poet, teacher, and martial artist, Seiko was born with the name Setsuko in the domain of Koga to a high-ranking family of the samurai class. Young Setsuko would normally have been subjected to an arranged marriage, but her class allowed for some freedom. Girls were not permitted to study painting as apprentices in the traditional workshop studios. So instead, Setsuko received private training from various artists and scholars, gaining a well-rounded and diverse literati education. At 28, Setsuko wished to move to the capital of Edo, now Tokyo, to begin a career as an artist. However, laws in the late Edo period Koga forbade women from leaving the clan lands, so Setsuko arranged to be adopted by an aunt in the neighboring clan of Sekiyado, which had no restrictions on women's travel. Shortly after arriving in Edo around 1865, she changed her name from Setsuko to Seiko, a name that gives no indication of gender, meaning clear lake. Seiko was a masculine, robust figure wearing men's clothes and short hair in a male style. A gregarious personality, quick-witted, creativity, and a penchant for conversation made Seiko an extremely popular and sought-after personality at scholarly gatherings and parties. It did not take long for Seiko to become an established artist. Seiko was the first female artist to have an audience with the Empress, and Seiko's home became a favorite gathering place for artistic and literati leaders of the day. Seiko opened a co-ed school in the early 1870s, believing that girls who were serious about their education needed a place to study away from the demands of home. The school grew, reaching upward of 300 students, including geisha. Watanabe Seiran, originally one of Seiko's students, was Seiko's companion for more than 40 years. Seiran was a talented painter in her own right. Not only did she manage the household and studio affairs, but she helped with the creation of commissioned works and the training of students. She was also responsible for the numerous study works and sketches necessary for the completion of paintings. Seiran emulated Seiko's style so perfectly that it is difficult to tell their work apart without a signature.
Wow.
And so in this painting, actually, I found that the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston has some of their paintings and prints. And So in the background, I put those pieces that are in the collection sort of
Oh.
in progress being made. And then the cat, I used my own cat as a model, but I put that in there because they find cat prints on their paintings. So,
Oh, great. That's so fun.
which I'm sure will happen to mine as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not the prints, but definitely the cat hair.
Yes. I work resin, and there's probably not a piece that doesn't have my dog hair in it.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a disaster to try to keep it out.
Totally. And then lastly, I wanted to read Billy or Sammy Williams, mostly because of the landscape. It's just a very familiar landscape from me with family in the Midwest in Minnesota, and I grew up in Idaho, and they died in Montana. So this is Sammy Williams. Sammy Williams died of apoplexy in Manhattan, Montana on December 10th, 1908. He was reportedly between 68 and 80 years old. Upon preparation for Williams' burial, a deathbed discovery was made. The body was female. Williams had worked as a lumberjack and camp cook throughout Montana, the Dakotas, Iowa, and Wisconsin. He had lived in Gallatin County, Montana for 18 years. By the time of his death, he had accumulated an estate that included over 300 acres of land. Apart from the occasional joke about his lack of facial hair, no one had suspected anything, so his death prompted a number of questions. A local resident who remembered seeing him many years earlier in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, wrote to the chief of police in Eau Claire in an attempt to gather more information. He received prompt confirmation that Sammy had lived in Wisconsin in the 1870s, but had gone by the name Billy. Williams was described as short and stout with black hair, a soft voice, and a slight hunchback. He was strong as an ox and drank, smoked, chewed, and cursed like the rest of his friends. Though his friends admitted to not knowing much about his past, their recollections of Sammy/Billy were positive. He was very popular, respected, and charitable. Many recounted his frequent donations to the poor and visits to the sick or elderly. He was always willing to lend a hand. Others recalled that he never hesitated to go out with the lumberjacks and spend money on the saloons. He was a great ladies' man who liked to take the girls out dancing. Letters found among his personal effects revealed that he had several love affairs with women over the years. Speculation ran wild after Williams' death as newspapers struggled for explanations. In this part, I'm using the pronouns that the newspaper uses. So, was she spurned by a lover at an early age and thus decided to live as a man? Was it a prank or the result of a quarrel with her parents? Did she do it to survive financially? Or perhaps she was just a strange character? One version of the story garnered more attention than the others. It suggested that Williams had been a heartbroken Norwegian named Ingeborg Wecken, who had been jilted as a young girl by her fiance and thus took up life in the lumber camps. Although this tale quickly spread throughout the country's newspapers, scholars Peter Boag and Emily Skidmore say it was likely a fanciful tale, a way of rendering him understandable to mainstream readers. On December 12, 1908, Williams was laid to rest. His friends organized the funeral service and collected money for a granite headstone that still stands in Manhattan's Meadowbrook Cemetery today.
Story.
Yeah, that happened a lot. The newspapers trying to make sense of things and just sort of literally making things up. This one was pretty fun because I got to research the types of forests that lumberjacks were working in. So the different types of trees, mostly white pine. And I used a lot of the archives of I want to say the Milwaukee Public Library or the Wisconsin Historical Society, probably both. And photographs of lumberjacks at the time were available. And it was just like amazing to see how contemporary they looked. And then learning about like their laundry habits. So they wore all their clothes at once because there was no like Gore-Tex or anything. So like, and then they would just, layer out the clothing. So like the inner layer would move to the top and then they'd rotate and then do all of their laundry on Sunday by boiling their clothes. It's gross.
Yeah. Well, did they actually do their laundry every week though?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, I haven't heard
Yeah,
something put their clothes on and not take them off for the entire winter.
Yeah, they just like would rotate them around because they didn't want to get lice or any of that. And then they wore like super bright patterned clothing so that they could see each other in the woods. So I put a red shirt, and then the patterned pants are like underneath in this sense because I didn't want it to be too garish looking. But yeah.
So tell me again, what's the usual amount of hours that you do research for each of these stories and pieces? Because I know it's an extraordinary amount.
Yeah, sometimes it's funny, like sometimes the research isn't too bad. Like for Sammy Williams, for instance, like English materials readily available in, from libraries. The Midwest, I'm super familiar with. So the research itself on that one was really fast, probably like a month. But if I need help, say with like translation, or if the painting I've decided to make is super, super complicated, like the one I'm working on now, it's taking me a very, very long time. So it can be as quick as a month for Sammy, and as long as like probably like, I think Captain Wright probably took me 6 months because of the interior, which is a Victorian interior, and all of the patterns and every artifact in the painting is like from an antique catalog of the time or an auction house, or they're all like real objects from the time period that I found to put into the painting. And then just the act of painting it was really slow. So that's the case on the one I'm working on now, because it's a cityscape and all the fire escapes and windows and perspective is just like, it's killing me. But
Wow. Because I know you're a professor. It's like, how do you balance, that, teaching with your art?
Yeah. Well, I'm part-time. So currently I teach at 2, sometimes 3 places, and usually 3 to 4 days a week. And so then those other days I spend doing the painting, and then usually the evenings is research, because I like to paint during the day, mostly the morning, like 9 or 10 a.m. till probably about 4ish is when my eyes start to give out. So yeah.
Wow. No, I love your dedication to project and your practice. So would you like to tell us anything else about the project?
I think it's just like, the more I think about it, like thinking about how long I've been doing it, like I'm incredibly grateful to have the resources that I have. Without the internet and librarians and archives, this project wouldn't exist. And yeah, I'm really lucky to have been able to find the people that I found, and I'm really like grateful to be able to like tell their stories, and I'm excited for the next book to come out for people to read them.
Yeah, so tell us where can people find volume 1? Where can they purchase it?
Volume 1 is in bookstores. If your bookstore doesn't have it, you can request it. Or I know that it's also it's on Amazon and some of the online retailers. Yeah, so I know my local bookstore down the street has a copy, so thankfully it's still out there. And volume 2 will be the same once it's out. Volume 2 will also include a new introduction and a couple essays. So.
Oh no, that's great, because I know it's available on Amazon. Some people are anti-Amazon, so
Indeed. Yeah.
But I know they can go to your website to find, links to others if they don't want to buy from Amazon. But
yeah, or even, just going to your bookstore or your library. It's in a lot of libraries too. So.
Yeah. So it's really exciting, coming up on June 5th, which is actually why we're together today, because this will be broadcast there. As we're having a program where a lot of your stories will be read by the community for a family event. And so we're still looking forward to that. So for anyone who's watching, go to the Museum of Sonoma County website for more information on the events of the day. And also that will actually be the close of the show also. So June 5th, agency will be coming down, unfortunately, but it's been a wonderful show. And I just can't tell you how grateful I am that you shared your work and your stories with me and for the museum.
Thank you, Karen. I mean, I know this show has been like a long time coming and it's an incredible show. And I was just like, I'm so excited to be included with all the other artists. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, my true pleasure. And I really look forward to working more in the future. And on that note, I know you're headed to Costa Rica, so have a wonderful, wonderful time. And hopefully I will see you soon.
Yeah, same.
So much.